I, you know, I can't go that far because I know the United States is behind them. I know that if it comes to it, we'll put troops in there. I didn't think that 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago. I didn't think that. But I've watched the insanity unfold. I've watched the insanity come out of Lloyd Austin, out of Tony Blinken, out of Jake Sullivan, and ultimately out of Joe Biden. Um, we are not going to let Israel get an extremist.
Russia and Iran's defense relationship looks to be deepening. What started as drones supply is developing potentially to something way more far reaching. It is raising concerns globally, and the West has imposed new sanctions on the Islamic Republic of Iran.
A few hours ago, Iran, for the second time in the space of 5 months, launched a direct attack on Israel, including some 200 ballistic missiles. This is totally unacceptable, and the entire world should condemn it. Initial reports suggest that Israel, with the active support of the United States and other partners, effectively defeated this attack. We have demonstrated once again our commitment to Israel's defense. We'll remain in very close touch with Israel and other partners in the region.
Because we're being pushed somewhat kicking and screaming, but willingly into a war with Iran. And that's one reason why Putin would not finalize the defense pact with Iran. Because if it's finalized, it means, as Article 5 does in the NATO treaty, that an attack on Iran by Israel, or Israel and the United States, will be responded to by Russia. And Putin's got enough on his hands right now with Ukraine to not want to do that. He's willing to send the most sophisticated weaponry, maybe even sophisticated fighters and other things. I'm hearing he's sending these things to Iran, and to make Iran's chances of doing real damage to Israel far more significant, and even standing off the United States without main force being used by the United States, which we do not want to do. Too many weaknesses will be exposed to China and Russia and to others in the world if we have to take on Iran frontally, that is to say, in their faces. So, he's got the best of all possible arrays in front of him in terms of his enemies. And he doesn't want to mess with that to the point where he jeopardizes what is inevitable and what is going to come down the road eventually. I think he's as prudent and as smart with this situation as he's proven to be with the Ukrainian situation. I've said he's pragmatic, he's prudent. I don't care about his autocratic tendencies or anything like that. I'm not in Russia. I'm not living under him. That's a mistake we make in the United States. We posit ourselves in every place we're conflict with or potential conflict with. And we say, well, we do live under him. Russians seem to be pretty content living under him, except for that core that is always going to be discontented. We have a core like that in our country too, and we're supposed to be a democracy. So Putin is a sharp cookie. He's not going to give the Iranian president the incentive to do any more than he should do, but he's going to not let him fall either. So we take this path at our own peril, and we take it walking into a trap set up for us ultimately by our two major potential peer power antagonists in the world, Russia and most formidably China. It's not something we should be doing. I'm looking at a map last night. I'm just gazing over it, and saying, okay, who can we depend on in the world anymore? I don't count any of the NATO countries because they're so squirrely right now. You couldn't put them in a column and say the European Parliament is a perfect example. If you saw their haranguing of Orban and Orban's response to them, and then their haranguing back, and it was almost vicious. That's a perfect example. They are feckless. They have no armies. They have no navies. They have no air forces. And look at them standing up there and yakking like they do. They're letting others do the fulfillment of their yakking for them. And if you ask them to go to the front lines, they'd be the first people to get on a plane for Las Vegas. So the world is reshaping itself. It's changing every day. And all these wars, Ukraine, Gaza, indeed, some of the things that are happening elsewhere, like in the Sudan, are just theaters, little theaters of what's happening around the world generally. And we're oblivious to them, basically. We're oblivious to them except on the old precepts. Israel must stay what it is. We must use Israel to clean up Southwest Asia. That's been our goal all along, expressed in the clean break strategy, then expressed again by Biden, then expressed, well, before that by Condi Rice, then expressed again by Biden, then expressed again by, the group that has gotten together now to support Israel. I mean, NATO's in on this too, falling apart with its support, though. It's all about preserving primacy, preserving hegemony, and cleaning up that area of the world which we have been singularly unsuccessful in cleaning up. And we've been so because we do not understand it, we use the wrong methodologies, and our allies are tyrants themselves, like Mohammed bin Salman. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked. For years, it hasn't worked. And it isn't going to work this time. Could be disastrous this time. It's just it could help a modicum, but not majorly. Theater high altitude air defense was what it was when the Army had it. And then it morphed into a more substantial system with a lot higher capability for ballistic missile bring down. And so it migrated over to the Missile Defense Agency and got called Terminal High Altitude Air Defense. But it didn't really change much in its technology. What did change significantly was the most important aspect of it, really. The hardware is important, but the most important aspect is the quality of the radar, the quality of the hookup of the radar and the missile system, and the ability to differentiate and direct. It doesn't have a warhead even. It's just a kinetic strike. I went through a long discussion with people who tested this system for a number of years. And there were two parties amongst them. Some who had seen the OTIA, Operation Test and Evaluation program, said it's a pig in a poke. It's Lockheed Martin's billion-dollar. It's the missile equivalent of the F-35. it's billions of dollars. We sold it to South Korea, put it in South Korea. We sold it to the UAE, put it in the UAE. Now it's in Israel. I don't think it's all that good a system based on the physics and based on the technology experts I've talked to. I don't think it's that good a system. Yeah, it'll hit a few things. It's fired a couple of times. I think it fired in anger once out of the UAE, if I recall. It hit a Houthi missile and brought it down. All this to say, it's all political what we did. It's putting more American soldiers in harm's way. We're up from 60 to 100. It's putting a U.S. system in harm's way. It's making it look to Netanyahu and to others in the world like we're in for a penny, in for a pound. We're backing him to the hill. And all it really is a political move to say essentially to Iran, we're in if you hit these guys and gals. I assume there's some women there too. We're in. There are Americans on the ground. Now, we've had a base there for some time. We have the American flag flying on that base. There's been a THAAD unit down in the South for a long time. So this is all political. It's all aimed at the election, and it's all aimed at saying we are with Israel to the end. Here's what I've heard. You probably saw the Economist article. I don't read the Economist much anymore because that British rag is a rag too. But the guy was saying, okay, there are four things they can hit, what you were just detailing. They can hit the nuclear facilities, they can hit the oil facilities, they can hit strictly military targets, or, they can go after infrastructure or whatever. What Netanyahu has said, I think, is, and this is probably one of his lies. I don't know. I don't believe the man anymore. No matter what he says, I don't believe him until proof is in the pudding. He says he's going to hit military targets. At least that's what I've heard. He's going to hit military targets. No oil facilities and no nuclear facilities. That's probably a smart decision if that's what he actually executes, because if you hit nuclear facilities, one, you're going to be embarrassed because you're really not going to do any real damage to it. Second, you might do enough damage to release some radioactivity and some dangerous stuff. That's not going to look too good. Tacked on to Gaza, tacked on to Lebanon. And if you hit oil facilities, you might just piss some people off badly enough to where they might even further withdraw support from it. And by that, I mean driving oil up to $300 a barrel. We participated in China in 2009 in Beijing in a petroleum distribution. We call it a petroleum disruption exercise. That's what we called it. Everyone participated. MARAD, the Japanese, Lloyd's of London, insurers, and it's bad when you do things like we took down Ras Tanura, which at that time was putting out about 8 to 12 million barrels per day production. And oil overnight went to $300 a barrel. This is in 2009. $300 a barrel. Shippers refused to ship. Insurance companies refused to insure. And the only way we corrected the situation was to send half the United States Navy to the Strait of Hormuz. And that's what you're looking at. You're looking at really disturbing world oil markets. That's not going to please anyone. So I suspect if he strikes, he'll hit military targets, like he said. Now, what does he call military targets? Is the IRGC headquarters a military target? Is the regular Iranian military headquarters a military target, or barracks? What is it he's going to hit? That's not really a very demonstrative target to hit. So that's one reason I have some doubt about him just hitting military targets. But it would be on the escalation ladder, the next step, I guess you would say. After all, Iran just hit some Israeli military targets and killed some people.